King Charles visited the U.S. to mark the 250th anniversary of American independence from Britain and to seek the release of a British hostage being held by an American terrorist.
Chaos erupted inside Studio 8H after Colin Jost delivered a brutal joke about Meghan Markle that sent the audience into hysterics and exploded across social media within hours. But behind the laughter, reports of Meghan's emotional reaction sparked an even bigger debate. How did a woman once celebrated by Hollywood and defended by the media become one of Saturday Night Live's punchlines? And was this roast simply comedy, or the latest sign that public opinion has shifted against the Sussexes? And do you think SNL was exposing the reality or crossing the line? Share your comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more royal stories. The night Studio 8H turned against Meghan. On May 2, 2026, the atmosphere inside Studio 8H changed in a way few people expected. During Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update segment, Colin Jost calmly delivered a joke about King Charles visiting America, while supposedly trying to secure the release of a British hostage. Seconds later, a photograph of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle appeared behind him. The audience exploded with laughter almost instantly. Jost briefly struggled to hold his composure before moving to the next topic, but the moment had already escaped the studio and entered the wider media storm. Within hours, the clip was circulating across X, Page 6, Sky News Australia, GB News, and the Daily Mail. The reaction was immediate and unusually intense. Some viewers dismissed it as another celebrity joke from a late-night comedy show. Others believed it represented something far more serious. For years, Meghan had been defended by large parts of the American entertainment industry, especially after stepping away from royal duties with Harry. Yet this time, one of America's biggest comedy platforms openly turned her into the punchline of a nationally televised segment, and the crowd responded without hesitation. What made the moment even more striking was how carefully Saturday Night Live operates behind the scenes. Weekend Update jokes are not improvised. Every line is reviewed repeatedly by writers, producers, and network lawyers before reaching the broadcast desk. Nothing involving public figures, especially members of the royal family, appears on air casually. That detail fueled growing speculation online that NBC executives clearly understood the joke's meaning and still approved it for millions of viewers. Critics argued that the network would never have allowed the line unless they believed the audience was ready to laugh along with it. The laughter itself quickly became part of the controversy. Social media users replayed the clip repeatedly, focusing not only on Jost's delivery but also on the crowd's reaction. There were no gasps, no uncomfortable silence, and almost no visible resistance inside the room. Instead, the audience responded as though the joke confirmed an opinion already forming in public conversation. That response created uncomfortable questions surrounding Meghan's standing in Hollywood and American media culture. Some commentators even suggested that the protection once surrounding the Sussexes was beginning to disappear in real time. Behind the headlines and viral clips, another possibility slowly emerged. The joke may not have been shocking because it was cruel. It may have been shocking because it reflected how dramatically public attitudes had shifted. For Meghan Markle, the moment appeared to signal something larger than a harsh comedy segment. It looked like the exact point where mockery stopped feeling isolated and started becoming mainstream entertainment. Whether that perception was fair or exaggerated remained debated. Supporters insisted the backlash had become cruel, while critics argued the couple had spent years fueling attention through interviews, documentaries, and disputes. Either way, the Weekend Update segment no longer looked like harmless comedy. It looked like a sudden turning point. If a single joke on Weekend Update could trigger that reaction, what does it reveal about the forces now surrounding Meghan Markle, who decided the boundaries were gone? And why did global audiences respond so differently this time? And what happens next? Stay with us when the laughter became the story. By sunrise, the Colin Jost joke was no longer confined to Studio 8H. The clip had escaped into every corner of the internet, racing across X, Page 6, Sky News Australia, GB News, and the Daily Mail before the weekend had even ended. Millions of viewers were no longer debating whether the joke was harsh. They were replaying the audience's reaction again and again. Inside the studio, nobody seemed shocked. Nobody protested. The crowd laughed loudly from the moment Prince Harry and Meghan Markle appeared on screen, and that reaction quickly became more important than the joke itself. For Meghan, the timing could not have been worse. Her public image had spent years being carefully rebuilt through Netflix projects, lifestyle branding, interviews, and curated appearances designed to present a calmer and more polished version of life in Montecito. Yet within seconds, Saturday Night Live reduced that image to a national punchline. Royal commentators soon described the segment as one of the most brutal Sussex jokes the show had ever aired. The intensity of the coverage surprised even longtime royal watchers because this criticism was no longer coming from British tabloids alone. It was now coming from mainstream American comedy television, broadcast through one of NBC's biggest cultural platforms. That distinction mattered. British newspapers criticizing Meghan had become expected over the years, but American entertainment institutions once treated her very differently. In the beginning, much of Hollywood viewed her as a modern outsider challenging the royal system. That sympathy had protected the Sussexes through countless controversies. But after the Weekend Update segment aired, some observers began questioning whether that protection was quietly disappearing. The laughter inside Studio 8H sounded less like a risky comedy gamble and more like confirmation that public attitudes had already shifted. Reports soon claimed the atmosphere around Montecito had become unusually quiet as headlines continued spreading internationally. Supporters argued the joke crossed a line and turned personal attacks into entertainment. Critics countered that comedy only succeeds when audiences already recognize the underlying frustration behind it. That argument fueled even more debate online. If viewers truly rejected the joke, why did the crowd respond so instantly and so naturally? Why did the clip continue gaining momentum instead of fading away after one news cycle? Behind the growing controversy sat an even larger question. The moment did not feel isolated. It felt rehearsed by history itself. Over several years, Saturday Night Live had repeatedly returned to Harry and Meghan through sketches, monologues, and royal punchlines that slowly became sharper with time. Each appearance pushed the audience slightly further until the latest joke landed without resistance. What happened on May 2nd, 2026, suddenly looked less like one savage comedy segment and more like the climax of a long public shift still unfolding. Whether that shift reflected exhaustion or power of mockery remained uncertain, but the silence surrounding Meghan after the broadcast deepened suspicions that the Sussexes were losing control of their narrative viewers everywhere. Yet beneath the laughter, something deeper was shifting in public perception. Was this still comedy, or something more deliberate? And why did the audience's reaction feel like a turning point no one expected? And what had SNL been quietly building toward all this time? Let's find out. The joke that predicted the collapse. Long before the 2026 hostage joke exploded across television screens, another Saturday Night Live moment had already hinted that public attitudes toward Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were changing faster than many realized. On May 10, 2025, Colin Jost sat behind the Weekend Update desk discussing a newly announced trade agreement between the United States and the United Kingdom. At first, the segment sounded like ordinary political comedy. Then the punchline arrived. Jost joked that Britain's only demand in exchange was that America should keep these two. Seconds later, a smiling image of Harry and Meghan appeared behind him, taken shortly after the couple attended Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter concert. The studio erupted. The laughter was immediate, loud, and noticeably stronger than many expected. Even Jost appeared briefly caught off guard by the scale of the reaction, before regaining composure and continuing the segment. Online, the clip spread rapidly across social media and international news platforms. Yet what made the moment so striking was not only the joke itself, it was the timing surrounding it. During that same week, Prince Harry was publicly speaking about reconciliation with the royal family during a BBC interview, while Meghan was simultaneously attempting to relaunch parts of her public image through new Netflix projects and lifestyle branding efforts. To supporters of the Sussexes, the joke felt dismissive and unnecessarily personal. To critics, it reflected a growing frustration already building among audiences on both sides of the Atlantic. The idea behind the punchline was simple but damaging. It suggested Harry and Meghan had become figures neither Britain nor America fully wanted to claim anymore. For a couple once celebrated as symbols of modern royalty and global celebrity influence, the implication carried unusual weight. The audience reaction inside Studio 8H only intensified those interpretations because the laughter sounded less like surprise and more like recognition. That reaction became impossible to ignore in the days that followed. Media outlets replayed the clip repeatedly, while commentators debated whether SNL was merely reflecting public opinion or actively helping shape it. Some observers argued that comedy often reveals cultural shifts before political commentary does. Others believed the Sussexes had become easy targets because years of interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and public disputes had exhausted viewers who once sympathized with them. Either way, the atmosphere surrounding Harry and Meghan no longer resembled the protection they once enjoyed from major American media institutions. The trade deal joke also created a pattern that would later make the 2026 hostage punchline land even harder. By the time Colin Jost returned 1 year later with another royal joke involving the couple, audiences were already conditioned to laugh. The emotional shift had already happened. SNL did not suddenly transform Meghan Markle into a comedy target overnight. The groundwork had been slowly built through repeated sketches, recurring punchlines, and changing audience reactions over several years. Looking back, the 2025 trade deal segment no longer appeared like an isolated joke. It looked more like an early warning that the Sussex brand was beginning to lose its emotional connection with the very public that once defended it most fiercely everywhere. Behind the laughter in 2025, something far more damaging was unfolding. But was it already a public verdict in disguise? Did the audience see through the Sussex image before the joke landed? And how did one appearance quietly reshape everything that followed? Keep watching. From fairy tale bride to comedy target. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in May 2018, much of the American media treated the wedding like a global fairy tale. Television networks celebrated the union as a modern turning point for the royal family, and Hollywood figures openly praised Meghan as a fresh, relatable outsider entering one of the world's oldest institutions. At that stage, criticism aimed at the couple was relatively limited in the United States. Even Saturday Night Live initially appeared more interested in mocking the monarchy itself than attacking Meghan personally. But looking back years later, early signs of a different shift were already quietly appearing on screen. On the very night of the royal wedding, Weekend Update host Michael Chi delivered a line that immediately drew massive laughter from the audience. He joked that Meghan Markle had married some unemployed dude who still lives with his grandma. The punchline focused mainly on Prince Harry, portraying him as a privileged royal dependent on palace life rather than a working adult. At the time, the joke seemed harmless compared to the sharper criticism that would come later. Meghan was still largely viewed as the glamorous newcomer bringing change into the monarchy rather than becoming the target herself. That dynamic continued into 2019 when SNL aired a sketch titled Royal Baby Video shortly before the birth of Archie. The segment featured exaggerated versions of members of the royal family, speaking directly to Harry and Meghan's future child. Mikey Day portrayed Prince Harry, while Kate McKinnon played Queen Elizabeth with exaggerated stiffness and dry humor. During one exchange, the fictional queen welcomed the baby warmly before adding the line that would later spark controversy online, describing the child as half American, which means half traitor. The audience laughed loudly, and the line remained in the final broadcast without edits or apology. Another moment inside the same sketch quietly foreshadowed future tensions surrounding Meghan and Princess Kate. A parody version of Kate Middleton joked awkwardly about rumors of a feud while insisting everything was perfectly fine. In hindsight, viewers later revisited the scene because it aired years before the Oprah interview, Prince Harry's memoir Spare, and the endless speculation about division inside the royal family. What first looked like playful comedy slowly began appearing strangely predictive to royal commentators watching events unfold afterward. Yet the most remarkable part of this evolution was how dramatically public perception changed over time. In 2018, American entertainment culture largely embraced Meghan Markle. She represented modernity, celebrity, and independence entering a centuries-old institution. Saturday Night Live reflected that atmosphere by focusing most of its jokes on royal traditions, stiff aristocrats, and palace culture. Meghan often appeared positioned as the cool outsider disrupting outdated systems. But as years passed, the tone gradually shifted. The monarchy stopped being the main target, and Meghan herself increasingly became the center of the joke. That reversal surprised even longtime observers because it happened slowly enough to almost go unnoticed in real time. One sketch became another, then another, each slightly sharper than the last. By the time harsher punchlines arrived years later, the audience had already adjusted to seeing the Sussexes through a completely different lens. What began as playful satire aimed at royalty was quietly transforming into something far more personal and far more culturally revealing for audiences everywhere. Something subtle began shifting in the way the jokes were written, but was it just comedy evolving, or a deliberate narrative turn? And who decided when Meghan stopped being protected and started being targeted? Was this the beginning of something far bigger? Stay glued. When Sympathy turned into satire. The turning point did not arrive through one scandal or one interview alone. It unfolded gradually after Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sat down with Oprah Winfrey in 2021 and publicly described their struggles inside the royal family. The interview immediately dominated global headlines, sparking intense debate about race, palace culture, media treatment, and the couple's departure from royal duties. For a time, sympathy toward Meghan appeared stronger than ever in the United States. Many viewers saw her as someone exposing painful experiences behind palace walls. But while the interview generated serious conversations, it also opened the door for comedians to transform deeply emotional claims into material for mainstream entertainment. Only weeks later, Saturday Night Live stepped directly into the controversy. Actor Daniel Kaluuya hosted the show and addressed the royal drama during his opening monologue. Speaking about being Black and British, he delivered the line that instantly spread across social media. "I'm what the royal family was worried the baby would look like." The audience erupted with laughter and applause. The joke referenced one of the most explosive moments from the Oprah interview, when Harry and Meghan claimed concerns had been raised about how dark Archie's skin might be. SNL had taken one of the most sensitive royal controversies in recent history and turned it into late-night comedy watched by millions. That moment marked an important shift. Earlier jokes about the Sussexes often focused on celebrity culture or royal awkwardness. Now the show was directly incorporating the couple's most personal grievances into punchlines. Some viewers considered the humor bold and politically sharp, while others believed it trivialized serious accusations. Regardless of opinion, the effect was undeniable. Every new interview, documentary, or public statement from Harry and Meghan seemed to create another opening for satire. The pattern became even clearer after Prince Harry released Spare in early 2023. The memoir reignited tensions surrounding the royal family and produced endless media coverage. Soon afterward, SNL aired a parody rap sketch mocking the fallout surrounding the book and the Sussexes' public battles. One line comparing Harry and Meghan's relationship drama to royal rebellion triggered huge laughter from the studio audience, especially the phrase, "Not today, Satan," which quickly spread online and became part of royal commentary culture. The joke moved rapidly across X, reaction channels, and tabloid headlines, reinforcing the growing sense that the couple had become recurring comedy material rather than tragic public figures. Later that same year, another controversy handed SNL fresh ammunition. After global attention exploded around allegations of Photoshop manipulation involving a Wales family Christmas photo, Colin Jost joked that Meghan Markle had a finger they could use if they needed it. The line referenced both the image controversy and previous accusations surrounding Meghan's own promotional photography. The audience immediately burst into laughter again, and the segment circulated online within hours. By this stage, something deeper seemed to be happening. Sympathy was slowly being replaced by exhaustion, skepticism, and mockery. Every attempt by Harry and Meghan to explain themselves publicly appeared to generate even more material for comedians. SNL no longer treated the Sussex story like a sensitive cultural issue. It increasingly framed the couple as characters inside an ongoing public spectacle, still growing larger with each new appearance and every controversy they faced publicly. Behind the laughter, a deeper shift was unfolding. Was public sympathy quietly collapsing? Or was something far more strategic being shaped in real time? As comedians pushed further, who truly benefited from the ridicule, and how long before the tone changed again? Stay tuned. Hollywood's protection starts fading. For years, Meghan Markle occupied a unique position inside American media culture. After marrying Prince Harry and leaving royal duties behind, she was often portrayed as a modern outsider, challenging an ancient institution. Hollywood celebrities defended her publicly, streaming platforms invested heavily in the Sussex brand, and major networks treated criticism against the couple cautiously. Yet by 2026, something had clearly changed. The same entertainment industry that once appeared protective now seemed increasingly comfortable laughing at Meghan in front of millions of viewers. And nowhere was that shift more visible than on Saturday Night Live. The transformation did not happen overnight. It developed gradually through repeated controversies, public interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and endless media appearances that kept the Sussexes constantly in the headlines. Every new project promised to reshape public perception, but instead, many viewers began feeling overwhelmed by the constant cycle of explanations, disputes, and emotional revelations. Discussions surrounding Netflix productions, podcast cancellations, public branding efforts, and celebrity partnerships slowly created a growing sense of fatigue around the Sussex image. Critics claimed the couple talked too much about privacy while remaining permanently visible. Supporters insisted they were unfairly targeted no matter what they did. Either way, the public conversation surrounding Meghan became increasingly difficult to control. Saturday Night Live appeared to recognize that change earlier than most. In previous years, jokes about Meghan and Harry were occasional and relatively soft. Over time, however, the humor became sharper, more direct, and far more personal. Writers at NBC no longer seemed worried about audience backlash. Instead, each new punchline generated louder reactions than the last. That detail mattered because comedy shows survive on audience response. If a joke repeatedly fails, writers abandon it quickly. But if viewers laugh harder each time a topic returns, comedians continue pushing further. The repeated Sussex jokes suggested something deeper than random celebrity teasing. They hinted at a broader cultural shift already taking place among audiences themselves. The laughter inside Studio 8H became its own form of commentary. Viewers were not reacting with discomfort or hesitation anymore. They responded instantly, almost as if the jokes confirmed frustrations already building in public opinion. Some commentators began arguing that SNL was no longer shaping perceptions of Meghan Markle. Instead, it was reflecting them. That distinction carried serious implications, because mainstream comedy often follows public mood, rather than creating it entirely from nothing. What made the situation especially striking was how unusual it appeared compared to the treatment of other celebrities. Powerful entertainment figures are often shielded from sustained ridicule by the same media institutions that benefit from their fame. Yet Meghan increasingly seemed excluded from that protection. NBC writers repeatedly returned to her story, and major media outlets amplified the clips instead of distancing themselves from them. Each viral moment strengthened the sense that the Sussexes were no longer viewed primarily as inspirational public figures, but as recurring characters inside an ongoing cultural spectacle. By the time Colin Jost delivered the 2026 hostage joke, the groundwork had already been laid over several years. The audience reaction was not sudden or accidental. It reflected a relationship between public sentiment, celebrity fatigue, and comedy that had been evolving quietly in plain sight. Whether fair or unfair, the shift surrounding Meghan Markle now appeared far bigger than one television joke alone or scandal. Was Hollywood's silence really accidental or carefully timed? And if comedians are only repeating what audiences already feel, who decided Meghan had become the easiest target? What unseen shift inside elite media finally changed the rules of protection? And what does it lead to next now? The two-continent laughter line. By the time SNL UK officially launched on Sky and Peacock, the tone of royal comedy had already shifted far beyond what anyone could have predicted years earlier. What began as an occasional satire of palace life in American television had now expanded into a transatlantic pattern, where both American and British comedy platforms were pulling from the same royal headlines. The result was a synchronized wave of jokes that placed Meghan Markle and Prince Harry at the center of an ongoing public spectacle that no longer stayed confined to one country or one audience. On the American side, Saturday Night Live continued to build on its established approach, repeatedly inserting Meghan and Harry into weekend update segments, sketches, and parody news stories. At the same time, SNL UK developed its own version of royal satire, with British comedians directly engaging with figures like Prince Andrew and other members of the royal family, in a style that mirrored, but also intensified, the humor coming from across the Atlantic. Prince Andrew, in particular, became a frequent target, often positioned as a darker counterpart in sketches that contrasted sharply with the lighter tone once reserved for royal comedy. As both shows evolved in parallel, Meghan and Harry increasingly appeared as recurring figures in unrelated jokes, sketches, and commentary pieces. The repetition itself began to shape perception. Instead of being treated as occasional subjects of satire, they became consistent reference points in royal comedy across two major entertainment markets. Over time, that visibility created a new cultural framing, where the Sussexes were no longer seen primarily as former senior royals or global advocates, but as familiar punchlines within a shared comedic language between American and British audiences. This shift stood in stark contrast to how the couple had first been introduced to the world. When Meghan married Prince Harry, their story was widely framed as a modern fairy tale. It was described as a moment of renewal for the monarchy, blending tradition with a global, multicultural identity. Media coverage once focused heavily on romance, optimism, and institutional change. Yet as years passed, that narrative gradually eroded. Public controversies, interviews, and ongoing disputes replaced the early optimism, and comedy began filling the space where admiration once existed. By 2026, the cumulative effect of years of sketches, jokes, and viral clips had positioned Meghan and Harry as what some commentators described as the most mocked couple on two continents. The phrase reflected not just the frequency of jokes, but the scale of their cultural reach. Every new appearance, whether in news commentary or scripted satire, seemed to reinforce the same perception. Even when the humor varied in tone, the outcome remained consistent. Laughter followed their names more often than applause. Against this backdrop, Colin Jost's 2026 Weekend Update joke no longer appeared as an isolated moment. Instead, it stood as the culmination of an 8-year trajectory that had slowly transformed public reception of the Sussex brand. The hostage joke about King Charles's visit to America, paired with images of Harry and Meghan, landed so strongly because audiences had already been conditioned by years of similar framing. What once might have been considered shocking now felt almost expected. As the laughter echoed through Studio 8H and across global media feeds, a deeper question emerged beneath the surface of the comedy. If both American and British institutions of satire were now consistently drawing humor from Meghan Markle's public life, what did that say about how the world viewed her story today? And could that perception ever shift again? So, what do you think? Has SNL crossed a line roasting Meghan Markle, or is the public finally seeing the truth behind the laughter?